Hey, Chris Duff over at Serious Land Capital, vacant land funding partner. So I'm going to do some even shorter than usual episodes. Both it's a bit of an experiment, and I know we're heading into a long holiday weekend, at least here in the US. So I was working most of today on this Washington state deal that we were anticipating closing for roughly 70K over the next month-ish. I know I've talked about it a bit over the past few weeks here, but ultimately it did not work out. So I want to go over some of these key due diligence lessons because this one was a complex and hairy property that was not obvious how hairy it was from the start. Uh, I want to break this down into some specific lessons about this, but it was roughly 5 acres just north of Seattle, right near some really significant developments, where there are $800,000-$900,000 homes in the area. So thought, okay, there's a real chance here that we could get some serious change this property. Ended up being way too hairy from an access perspective. There were wetlands that were not immediately apparent on the property, so I'm going to go over that. But a key warning sign was the seller situation. And I know I've remarked on this before, but sellers come in all forms and flavors effectively. Some will be, very straight up and some will not be. And I would always rather believe the former, but I underwrite from the latter perspective, meaning I take anything a seller says to us that's not backed by hard data or third party confirmation to take it with a grain of salt, because they're on the other side of the table, right? They're incentivized to get as high priced property, move on from something, we just have to keep their incentives in mind. And so with this particular property, we had noted that it sold for almost $250,000, somewhere around there in 2008. So I forget when the first month happened of the GFC. I think it was late 07, if I'm remembering. Yeah, somebody bought this even as the GFC was going down, at a pretty premium price, and then they let it go for via tax auction in 2022 for a fraction of that price. I'm not actually certain that we have the confirmed price paid on it, but I think it was right around seven. If you're doing the math there, I mean, that's 30 some odd percent of the price paid by the previous owner. And then we had this property under contract for 70K as well. And the seller was really aggressive from the start and asking for all these terms changes. And it's like, oh yeah, it's buildable. I'll give you all the reports about this. And was also indicating, hey, if you guys don't close within this 30, 45-day window. We kept going back and forth about this. I think I talked about this in another episode, how to deal with this guy. Hey, you're going to be able to sell this for double here. I want, a larger EMD on this, and then earnest money deposit. And if you don't close by, that 45-day timeline, initially 1 in 30, it's going to go hard. We're like, okay, that you bought this via tax deed 3 years ago, so we're needing to go through tax title services, make sure the title is cleared so we can get marketable title on it. So, we went under contract with them to get this thing rolling so we could hit that closing timeline as we were completing DD. Obviously, it didn't work. And so, very fortunately, we were able to cancel that contract quickly without too much invested into the deal. I think our total hit would be less than $500. I always care more about time than money here. But before I dive into the other details why this was so hairy, just a key warning sign, again, just from the seller side, when you really start to be putting, That's why I always ask about what is the seller situation here? Why are they looking to let go of their property, and really assess the history of the property as well, and see if you can put together some of that data. And a situation like this was just a very clear warning sign where it's like, okay, this seems like it should have been a premium property given the surrounding neighborhood just north of Seattle. It's been a booming area for decades at this point, that somebody bought for almost $250,000 less than 20 years ago, and then let it go for a fraction of that price via tax auction without ever building on it. And then the person who bought it via tax auction is then looking to move on from it within a few years of purchasing, again, without ever doing anything on it either, and not really looking to profit on the deal. So if you see a situation like that where there's just a lot of red flags, okay, what is going on here? And really, anytime something goes via tax auction, like there's going to be more here, you really want to investigate further, then you start having to ask more questions on, is this seller legitimate? Am I missing something here? Are they trying to sell me a lemon? In this case, they were, and we canceled the contract here. And so, our suspicions were actually realized in accordance with this, questionable property history that just seemed even a bit too good to be true. So I'll end this lesson for today on this property, and there's still other lessons to come on this one. We certainly learned a lot here. So if you're looking for funding, seriousland.capital. Zero cost review of your land deals at Land Daily Diligence Facebook group, adding more and more people to it every single day, and landpricer.ai. A lot more work coming up this weekend on it. Even the new prompts I was working on have performed a lot better. We have like a 24% improvement on one of these that I fixed yesterday. It's really good to see when you actually put effort into something and it works out in the direction you want. So with that in mind, subscribe and share. Looking forward to talking to you next time. Take care. Bye.